Being a large and fast-growing economy gives India an additional responsibility, especially for climate change actions. What is carbon pricing? Is carbon pricing key to delivering India's climate targets? Why do many governments and business leaders support carbon pricing? Who is putting a price on carbon? In meeting its commitments made to fight against the climate change, how should India look into the stipulations of the Paris Agreement? GS Paper 3, Environmental Impact Assessment, Climate Change. Paris Climate Agreement had been formalized on October 2, birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. Is carbon pricing key to delivering India's climate targets? Under the National Plan India submitted to the United Nations, the government set a target to increase renewable energy capacity from 30% today to 40% by 2030. The plan also calls for installing 175 gigawatts of renewable energy capacity by 2022. An ambitious goal considering the world's total installed solar power capacity was 181 gigawatts in 2014. The government estimates that $2.5 trillion in investment will be needed to achieve its plan by 2030. Major Indian companies have stepped up to become sustainability champions by taking action to support carbon pricing. These and other Indian companies are partners of the Carbon Pricing Leadership Coalition, a new initiative designed to support successful carbon pricing across the globe. Thus for India, there is a clear opportunity for carbon pricing and also it is a need of hour. What is carbon pricing? Carbon pricing is the charges to be paid by those who emit carbon dioxide, CO2, for their emissions. It is the amount that must be paid for the right to emit 1 ton of CO2 into the atmosphere. So what does it mean to put a price on carbon, and why do many governments and business leaders support it? A price on carbon helps shift the burden for the damage back to those who are responsible for it, and who can reduce it. Instead of dictating who should reduce emissions where and how, a carbon price gives an economic signal and polluters decide for themselves whether to discontinue their polluting activity, reduce emissions, or continue polluting and pay for it. In this way, the overall environmental goal is achieved in the most flexible and least cost way to society. The carbon price also stimulates clean technology and market innovation, fueling new, low-carbon drivers of economic growth. Two main types of carbon pricing. 1. Emissions Trading Systems, ETS, cap and trade system. This system caps the total level of greenhouse gas emissions and allows those industries with low emissions to sell their extra allowances to larger emitters. By creating supply and demand for emissions allowances, an ETS establishes a market price for greenhouse gas emissions. The cap helps ensure that the required emission reductions will take place to keep the emitters, in aggregate, within their pre-allocated carbon budget. 2. Carbon tax. A carbon tax directly sets a price on carbon by defining a tax rate on greenhouse gas emissions or, more commonly, on the carbon content of fossil fuels. It is different from an ETS in that the emission reduction outcome of a carbon tax is not predefined but the carbon price is. Who is putting a price on carbon? Almost 40 countries and more than 20 cities, states and provinces already use carbon pricing mechanisms or are planning to implement them. These jurisdictions are responsible for more than 22% of global emissions. Others are developing or considering systems that will put a price on carbon in the future. Altogether, these actions will encompass almost half of global CO2 emissions. Examples include China launched pilot emissions trading systems in 7 cities and provinces in 2013 and 2014 and plans to create a national system in 2016. It has a goal to reduce emissions intensity by 40–45% compared with 2005 levels by 2020. In meeting its commitments made to fight against the climate change, how should India look into the stipulations of Paris Agreement? India is the third largest emitter of greenhouse gases in the world. The Earth's atmosphere does not care from where a carbon dioxide molecule is emitted. Being a low per capita emission of greenhouse gases, India should be well aware of the historic sins of the advanced industrialized countries. Without energy efficiency norms, India's aggregate carbon emissions would have risen by around 7% per year. With new regulatory norms and the adoption of new technology, carbon emissions will grow at only 4.5% or less. India's National Action Plan on Climate Change was formulated back in 2008 and consists of 8 missions. These missions included targets for solar energy, energy efficiency, water use efficiency, afforestation and so on. So, signing on to Paris was a logical continuation of that ambition. Thus India is an early champion of environmentalism. Thankfully, the road after Paris is not only desirable and achievable, but will also improve the investment climate in the country. Being a large and fast-growing economy, Paris Agreement gives it an additional responsibility, especially for climate change actions.